Pure Picks, this is Gerard, and today we're going to be doing a picks and predictions video for UFC Fight Night, Fiziev versus Torres. Now, before we get into that, let's go over how we've been doing so far this year on our most confident picks so far, which has been the main bright point this year for us. We've been 10-1 so far on our most confident picks. Whenever we had a fight where it was minus 200 or closer than minus 200 odds, we've been hitting on almost all of the picks that were at better odds than minus 200. So since that Rufi Fiziev fight early in the year in January, minus 125, all the way down to last week's minus 165 pick, most confident pick in Christian Rodriguez, able to get that club and sub in that first round against Haider Emil. So 10-1, not too bad on our most confident picks. So we're ready to keep that rolling, and it'll be a little bit of a surprise here because the odds for the next most confident pick is going to be better odds than usual. We'll keep it at that. But moving on, let's get into the main event for UFC Fight Night, Fiziev versus Manuel Torres. Now for this fight, obviously Fiziev is going to have the better record, the better competition on his record. He's only lost to the current champ, Justin Gaethje, lately, and the uber-talented striker in Mauricio Rufi. Now Manuel Torres is going to be that dangerous striking. He has those long limbs and he throws with all his might in every shot. So this is going to be a dangerous fight for Fiziev now that he's coming up from a TKO loss to Rufi, and now he's fighting another dangerous striker who's looking to knock you out in the first round. Obviously, Grant Dawson does not have the same pedigree in terms of his stand-up. Fiziev is going to be much better in the stand-up than Grant Dawson. And if you just look at a common opponent they had, Ignacio Bahamondes, Manuel Torres got knocked out that fight against Ignacio. He was able to get countered. Ignacio is also a long-limbed fighter, so he has the reach to get to Torres. Fiziev is on the smaller side. However, he's a very skilled all-around striker, Muay Thai. He does seems to be susceptible to that 1-2, those straight shots where he may keep his head in the center line too much. And we saw in that Mauricio Rufi fight, that was the end of him. Like he could not take that straight right. He wasn't moving his head in that second round, and he paid the price and got finished. Do I think Manuel Torres can do the same? Manuel Torres is not the sniper that Rufi is in the striking. He's not as technical, but he has all the power that if he lands, you're going to get put out. So that is the danger factor here. So round one, maybe round two, do I see Manuel Torres getting a finish? You know what? For this fight, I'm going to lean towards it more likely not the case. Though I can see it happening. I wouldn't be surprised if it happens. But I think I'm going to be leaning with Rafael Fiziev. He's been fighting the better competition. He's been competitive against the better competition. And Manuel Torres hasn't fought anybody to the caliber too much of a Fiziev or Justin Gaethje or Mauricio Rufi. I'm not sure if Manuel Torres meets up to the standards of a Justin Gaethje or a Mauricio Rufi. I do think this is a step down, but the danger factor here is still pretty high for Fiziev. So this is not going to be my most confident pick here, but I'm going to still rock with the Ottoman in Azerbaijan, Baku. Yeah, that I was considering him to be a confident pick here, but I think the red flags in Fiziev's potential lapses in defense from that 1-2 straight right, and Manuel Torres has a hell of a 1-2. So obviously Fiziev is going to know that, and I will assume that Fiziev's going to be smart to that and is going to find a way to fight and survive just the first 1 and 2 rounds, fight smart, not keep his head in the center line as often, and even mix up some grappling, slow down Torres, I think towards the end of the second, third, fourth, and fifth rounds, it'll look much better for Fiziev to find a win, and maybe even a TKO if Manuel Torres fatigues towards the third, fourth, and fifth rounds. So give me Fiziev. I think Manuel Torres minus 118 now. People are picking him up, and I like Fiziev at these closer to even odds. So that's going to be my pick. Give me Rafael Fiziev in that main event. Now, the second fight that I want to talk about is this Michel Pereira versus Shara Magomedov. Now, this fight, Shara Bullet, he's always been fighting out here in the Middle East. He's been a favorite in the Middle East. They've really been building him up, and his only loss has been to Michael Venom Page, who almost nobody's going to beat a Michael Page in a straight up striking match. So it's not too bad of a knock there. I would have said that this would have been a step up in competition against Michel Pereira, but the way Michel Pereira has been losing in his losses, he doesn't look the same fighter from his winning streak before the losses. So, and against Zach Reese, he got a split decision there. I know Zach Reese was a former sparring partner for Michel Pereira, so those fights get a little weird, usually less action-packed because both fighters knowing how they fight and used to fighting each other. So I don't know, that was a weird fight there. So in front of the Baku crowd, a lot of Shara Bullet fans, and the crowd's going to be going for Shara. I just don't know if Michel Pereira is going to have that same finishing capability that he used to have on his winning streak. And I think Shara is probably just going to pick apart Michel Pereira here. Pereira, he didn't look great in the Zach Reese fight. He still got the win, but I think Shara is just a different animal. So he's a big favorite, obviously. And yeah, that's going to be my pick there. Shara Bullet, potentially a finish, maybe in the later rounds, but Shara has been going to decisions. He tends to go decisions, back and forth, decision, knockout. So you never really know with Shara. He may just piece him up from the outside, and we'll see how this fight goes there. But Shara's my pick in that fight. Now, this fight right here, Almabayev versus Charles Johnson. Now, I'm a big energy fan. I was a bit devastated when he knocked out Joshua Van, and he even got a knockout on Loner Kavanaugh, and Kavanaugh made Brandon Moreno look like not a vet. He made Kavanaugh look like the vet, and Brandon Moreno did not look like a vet. And then Kavanaugh just basically rinsed Moreno in that 5 rounds. So, and the split decision here for Charles Johnson, Brunno Silva, I thought he lost that fight. I think if you pressure energy effectively, mix in some of that grappling, I think you're more likely to win. And I think that's something that Almabayev is capable of. I think he'll be able to turn on the grappling. If Charles Johnson ends up like a slow starter, like he usually is, we tend to see him, and then he picks it up later in the rounds. I think the early part of the fight, Almabayev will get things going in the first and second. I think he may be able to pocket the first 2 rounds. And then Charles Johnson may be able to make it more competitive as he gets into the 3rd round, but I think it may be too late for Charles Johnson to catch up. I think Almabayev will fight smart, and there may be a possibility for a finish, but I just don't see it. I don't think Almabayev will be able to finish Charles Johnson. Charles Johnson possibly have a puncher's chance, maybe find a knockout, but I don't think it's really hard for me to see Almabayev getting knocked out or TKO'd unless you poke him in the eye 500 times like Manuel did. So I'm going to go with Almabayev. I'm going to lean on the grappling, and I think he can mix it up and put on some of the pressure. I think he's going to be a quicker fighter than the Brunno Silva that Charles Johnson faced. So give me Almabayev in Baku against Charles Johnson. Charles Johnson always got a chance, so you can never really count him out. He tends to surprise people whenever you don't think he will, but he ends up doing it anyways. So he's usually a decent underdog in his past history, but in this fight, give me Asu. And I think he's a bit of a favorite in the minus 200s, I believe. So yeah, Asu is a minus 290 now. So yeah, pretty big of a favorite. Makes sense. That's also my pick. In terms of would I bet it, I'm not sure yet, because he tends to surprise. Next up, let's talk about this Brunno Ferreira versus Ikram Aliskerov. Now, my initial thoughts here is Aliskerov all the way. He's fighting here in the Middle East. He tends to do well, I believe, but he did lose to that Robert Whittaker by KO. And this is my thing here. Picks are not always bets. Okay, even though I'm going to be picking Ikram, I don't think I will be betting Ikram. Even his last fight, Junyoung Park, I think if Brunno Ferreira had Ikram in the same positions that Junyoung Park was able to do to Ikram, I think Brunno Ferreira would be able to finish Ikram because Junyoung Park does not have the power that Brunno has. And had that been Brunno Ferreira, Ikram would have been finished. I think Ikram would have been finished if Junyoung Park had the Brunno Ferreira power. So, and who knows, even Robert Whittaker showed you're able to get him out of there, get that flash knockout. And who has a history of having flash knockouts than the Hulk, Brunno Ferreira? I mean, he knocked out RoboCop in the first match. Obviously, he got starched in the rematch. And I mean, maybe you can go with the under on this fight. Brunno Ferreira tends to like to go under, usually the first or second round. So maybe you could do that, but let's see, Ikram. Yeah, even Ikram likes to finish fights in the first round. So maybe that might be the play there on this Ikram Aliskerov. So instead of taking the Ikram side, which I think is kind of minus 330, I think is kind of expensive. It's kind of scary. If I were to bet on this fight, I think it would probably have to be like the under 1.5, because I think either fighter can finish each other. And I don't think I would pay the juice for minus 330 Ikram. I think just on a value standpoint, I wouldn't be surprised if Brunno finds a finish in this fight. So my pick is Ikram, but I would not bet it. If I had to bet, it would either have to be Brunno Ferreira or the under 1.5. So picks are not always bets. You have to look at the matchup. You have to look at the styles, their history of how their fights end. And in this case, even though I pick Ikram to winning, I'm not touching minus 330. If I were to bet, even though I pick Ikram, I would rather bet Brunno at plus 270 or the under 1.5 at minus 115. So something to keep in mind there. So that's my thoughts for this fight. I'm on Ikram's side, but if I had to bet, looking at the odds, under 1.5 or Brunno at plus 270 is a better bet than minus 330 Ikram. So that's that fight. Now for this fight, Magomedov versus Michal Oleksiejczuk. These odds are much closer, so it's potentially more bettable, but at the same time, you may not really know what's going to happen in this fight. Obviously, on our picks, James posted we're going with Michal Oleksiejczuk by KO, I believe. That is our pick, but would we bet that? Maybe James would. For me, I'm still on the fence on this one because Magomedov, I mean, he's been looking improved against better and better competition. Joe Pyfer, just a different level above Abus. And obviously, I believe Joe Pyfer is obviously going to be better than Michal Oleksiejczuk. Now, Oleksiejczuk's now with the Fighting Nerds, and he's been racking up wins here since joining the Fighting Nerds. Whereas before, he was more of a wild fighter and had a hole in the grappling. Now, in this one, I think Oleksiejczuk is a more improved version now and fights a little smarter in his fights. Abus is known to be a gasser, and usually in the first or second round is when he looks at his best. But after that, sometimes it can look like one-way traffic for his opponent to finding a win. And we saw that in the Kyle Barrio fight, decision loss. He started off strong, but they ended up unanimous loss to Barrio towards the later rounds. And then Pyfer was able to finish him with a rear naked choke there. Initially, I wanted to go with Abus because I think he might actually be the more skilled fighter overall in terms of grappling, striking, and he is the taller and longer fighter, so he has the physicality to keep Michal off of him in dangerous situations, even though Michal is going to be coming forward and looking to crash if he wants to. So this fight, initially I'm with Abus, but I think with the momentum that Michal is on and his improvements, I think now I'm more so leaning towards Michal Oleksiejczuk. So now I'm flipping to Michal Oleksiejczuk. I'm gonna agree with James. James has him by KO. I'm not sure what the outcome is going to be, but I'll go with Michal this time. And I'm going to flip my pick from Abus to Oleksiejczuk in this one. I think he's going to have the more heart, more fight in him. So, and the improvements from fight to fight, I'll go with Michal Oleksiejczuk, even though I think Andre Barrio kind of showed that Michal isn't as of a dominant force, because Andre Barrio has been getting finished, but Oleksiejczuk wasn't able to finish him. So that's one thing that kind of keeps this fight closer than I would think. So this is why this one's pretty hard to pick, but I'll agree with James on this one. I'll go with Oleksiejczuk. Now, this fight right here is the one that I'm actually most intrigued with, not only because of the odds, but I think this is very good matchmaking. Both these fighters coming off of a loss against very, very good, potentially top 10, top 15 contending fighters in Topuria and Farid Basharat. And now we're trying to see, where does Jean Matsumoto and Bekzat fit into the rankings here. They are both very good prospects, 26 years of age for Jean and 28 years for Bekzat. Still reaching towards their primes. And man, Jean Matsumoto, he has an overall fight game that looks good in MMA. He comes forward, he throws a lot of volume, he mixes in the grappling, but he doesn't have that one special it factor, to where he doesn't have a specific skill set that dominates a fight or finds a finish, so to speak. Before, against lesser fighters, he's able to find submissions, but as he's gone on to fight these better fighters in the contending rankings area, he hasn't been able to find finishes. He's been going to split decisions, and he's been a bit of a split decision king, so to speak. And that's not always the greatest trait to have, especially if you're a favorite. Here, he's a -150 favorite on Topology against the +130 slight underdog, Bekzat Almakhan, who has the more dangerous finishing ability than Jean Matsumoto in this division, I believe. I think he has like a 82% or something finishing rate with his KOs, TKOs, and his most recent coming against Brad Katona, who he finished in like 60-something seconds with an uppercut. He looked like he was landing at will in that fight and countering. And that's one common opponent that Jean Matsumoto has with him. And Jean Matsumoto made it look a lot more hard. It looked way harder than I feel like it should have looked in his win against Brad Katona. Even though he won a unanimous decision, that was a very close fight against Brad Katona. And then Bekzat just put away Brad Katona like it was nothing. So that's my only gripe here with Jean Matsumoto, is his finishing ability and being able to look dominant in his wins. It never seems like he's ever dominant in his wins. He always seems to get pieced up in the fights that he's winning and losing. So it seems like he's always giving his opponents reason to steal a fight or steal a round. Even though he looked good against Farid Basharat, I mean, Basharat was able to land on him early and get him to bleed. That's also another scary part. If you were to side Jean Matsumoto, is that damage shows up on his face. He easily swells. He easily gets cut. So that could potentially even sway the judges if they're looking at damage. And this being in Baku, the crowd may be louder and ooh and ah for every potential big strike that Bekzat lands or even almost lands. So that's one thing that is going to be scary if you were to side a Jean Matsumoto as a slight favorite. Is he could be winning a round, but then the bigger moments may come from Bekzat with his quick in and out when he crashes, whenever Bekzat crashes in with his strikes, it gets a big reaction from not only his opponent, but also the crowd. The crowd likes to see those big power shots, and the power side is going to be on Bekzat, especially early in the fight. The first round will most likely, if it ends up mostly standing in that first round, I'm willing to bet that Bekzat's going to have the more damaging strikes, the strikes that gets the most reaction from Gene Matsumoto, and not only Gene, but also the crowd. Even if those strikes don't land as clean, I believe the crowd's may potentially sway the judges. If the rounds ends up being close, the crowd may win the round for the fighter landing or seeming to land the big strikes. And I think that side will be Bekzat. So all this to say, I will be signing with the underdog in this one. I think Gene Matsumoto, no matter how well-rounded he is, I think he leaves too much to be desired in the defense department. And if you're eating more than 5 strikes per minute, you don't want those strikes to be landed by Bekzat. If Bekzat's the one landing those strikes, it might end up being a short night for you. And that's my only gripe here. Gene Matsumoto can turn on the grappling, use that wrestling, even get him down. But from watching Bekzat's last fight, it looked like his takedown defense has improved a lot since the Umar fight. And Alexandre Topuria was having trouble keeping him down, and he was only 2 for 7 on takedowns with not much significant control time for Topuria. I'm guessing that Topuria's probably has the better wrestling than Gene Matsumoto, so I'm not so sure how effective Gene Matsumoto will be able to keep this fight on the ground if that's part of his game plan to control and pressure Almakhan. I think if for the most part, if this fight stays standing, and I do believe Bekzat can keep this fight standing, I think Bekzat's going to be the one that's going to be landing the damage. So give me the underdog. Yeah, he's a plus 140 now. He's going to be my most confident underdog on this card. And I actually do like Bekzat more than any of the slight favorites on this card. Looking through all the slight favorites, even Manuel Torres is a slight favorite. Nazim Sadikov, slight favorite. Michal Oleksiejczuk. Based on the matchup, I like Bekzat more than any of those fighters. Even Javier Reyes. I'm not even sold on Javier Reyes against Khan Ofli. I'd rather take Bekzat at plus 140 than minus 200 Javier Reyes in their matchups. So those are my thoughts on this card. Bekzat's going to be the most confident pick for me. So hopefully this 10-1 record on most confident picks ends up being 11-1 by the end of this weekend. And we shall see if we continue that streak going. So yeah, that's the video. And these are the picks that James posted. Obviously, these are the picks, not the bets. Going down this list, I mostly agree on this list. Rafael Fiziev decision, Shara KO, Nazim Sadikov. I could see a KO for Nazim. Almabayev decision, I lean that way too. Ikram Aliskerov by KO. This one, I'm not so sure. I am on the Ikram side, but I can easily see Brunno Ferreira by KO. I'd rather take inside the distance, maybe even under 1.5. This Ikram one, I would pick Ikram, but I'd rather bet Brunno on this one. Michal Oleksiejczuk. This one I'm not too confident in. James has him by KO. I'll go with Oleksiejczuk. Farman, not too much thoughts there. Yakyaev probably does win, maybe by sub. Nursultan Rozabayev. This one's kind of scary because Pulayev is a very game fighter. He's been around and he can make things interesting. But yeah, Nursultan's like a bit of a unicorn, so I'll go with Rozabayev there. Khan Ofli decision. I think I'm siding with Javier Reyes, but for me, I'm staying away from this one. I really don't know what's going to happen here. James has Ofli by decision, the more well-rounded MMA fighter, so I guess you can go there. Daniil Donchenko, I think this is a very confident pick. I'm confident for Donchenko, and he probably wins handedly. He's a big favorite, so I don't know if I would bet him. Maybe by a finish, so there's that. Gene Matsumoto. James is on the Gene Matsumoto by decision side. Me personally, I'm not mad at it. if you're on the Gene Matsumoto side, you probably just bet him by decision. But for me, I'm going with the underdog, Bekzat Almakhan. I think if it ends up being a fight based on damage and it goes to the judge's scorecard, I'm willing to bet that Gene Matsumoto is going to be the one who has the most damage on his face, the one who's got hit with the bigger shots. I think Gene Matsumoto is going to be the one that's going to be hit with the bigger shots. If it ends up being a mostly stand-up fight and judges are judging off of damage, I think Bekzat will win that. And also, Bekzat has the potential to get a knockout or TKO, even if Matsumoto hasn't been finished. If I had to pick a fighter to get a finish, I would pick Bekzat in that fight. So that's the difference for me and James here. We're on different sides on this one. And then Abdullayev, this fight, I'm just staying away from that fight. I don't know what's going to happen in that one. So yeah, those are the picks and predictions for UFC Fight Night. Fiziev versus Torres. I'm Gerard. I'm signing out. Peace.